Since the beginning of the festival, 21 years ago, we've presented an award named for King Vidor. He was a Central Coast resident for many years, and he owned a ranch that is now Whalebone Winery. And he's still considered the most prolific filmmaker ever. He successfully transitioned from silent films into the talkie era, and we actually have a movie about that, Singing in the Rain, tomorrow night at 6:30. So that was a challenging era for a lot of film directors to get through, and he did it very successfully. He began in 1913 with a film called Hurricane in Galveston, and through his career he got 5 Oscar nominations, right up until he directed his last documentary short in 1980 called The Metaphor. He was the first president of the Directors Guild of America, and he had a great reputation in the industry all that time, which is pretty amazing. He was a leader, a major creative talent, and a good guy, I hear. Well, of course, he lived on the Central Coast. I'm delighted to say that we have King Vidor's granddaughter and great-grandson here in the audience tonight, Gina McCloskey and her son, Alec. Could you just stand up and wave? Welcome to both of you, and Gina has been a great fan of our festival and a friend of our festivals for many years, so thanks for coming back, and thank you for being here, Alec. Now I'm about to hand over the podium to a man who needs no introduction in this town. He's a local legend. He owns the Palm Theater, which is the country's first solar-powered movie theater. Yeah. And the Palm Theater has been a very important part of the film festival ever since it began in 1993, and Jim was one of the original founders of the festival as well. Please welcome Jim D.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for being here. I hope you've been enjoying a lot of great films over this 6 days. The film festival continues through tomorrow, and thanks for being here tonight, a very, very special night. When Wendy told me that Peter Bogdanovich was going to be the honoree tonight, I sort of had a shudder and just said, wow. She said, do you want to introduce him and interview him? Of course, I said yes. It was a great honor and a privilege. Now, the intimidating thing about this is, how do you adequately introduce a director, a producer, actor, writer of screenplays, author of many books about directors and film, and he's become a renowned film scholar and film historian. And I want to thank Sarah Lynn for the excellent article that appeared today in the Tribune, sort of making my job a little bit easier up here. If you haven't seen the article on Peter Bogdanovich in today's Tribune, do check it out, because she gets into the scope of this man's 50-year-plus career. Now, before we show a wonderful tribute, some clips of the work of Peter Bogdanovich, I just wanted to try to connect a few dots here, and if you can stick with me here. Back in 1939, Orson Welles, at the age of 25, made a film called Citizen Kane. I think we have a closer relationship with this film because, you know, Xanadu is right up Highway 1, right? Hearst Castle. And at 25, Orson Welles created a film for the ages. It was groundbreaking in its cinematography, his performance incredible. It's an American film that transcends our borders. In other words, people around the world can enjoy Citizen Kane, this amazing story of a powerful newspaperman. John Ford, the great American director, also the creator of iconic films, the John Wayne westerns like The Searchers or The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, or perhaps one of his best-known films, The Grapes of Wrath. Again, iconic American films that are specific to this country, but they transcend our borders. I think that the power, the emotion, the craftsmanship, the artistry of these films can be appreciated by anyone around the world. Fast forward to the 70s. We have a film released in 1971 by a young director, screenwriter, editor. His name is Peter Bogdanovich, and the film was The Last Picture Show. It garnered 8... 8 Academy Award nominations, incredible film. And again, I want to say that here's a film, an iconic film about America, but there is a purity to it because people around the world can understand what these characters are going through in this little Texas town. So I'm linking these films together. What's the linkage here? Well, Peter Bogdanovich knew John Ford and wrote a book about him and did a documentary about him. He knew Orson Welles. Good friends, wrote a book about him, or made a documentary about him. And if lumping these films together, if you have any doubts about it, in 1998, the National Film Preservation Board of the Library of Congress named The Last Picture Show to the National Film Registry. It's for the ages, and it's an honor that is only given to culturally significant films. It's a film for the ages. Now, and some final comments, because I want to bring us up to date and I want to watch our reel. We're talking about a film that's over 40 years old, and the career of Peter Bogdanovich has never slowed down. He's directed many films, written many books. In 2007, he made a documentary on Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. There's a current release of John Ford's film, The Quiet Man. It's a Blu-ray. Commentary on there, Peter Bogdanovich. He knows his stuff. There's a brand new film coming out on Orson Welles. It's called Magician. Who provides the commentary or some insight? Peter Bogdanovich. So here, and also, last but not least, a new film coming out. She's Funny Like That. No, She's Funny That Way. I blew the title when I was talking to him earlier too. She's Funny That Way. It has Jennifer Aniston, a comedy written and directed by Peter Bogdanovich. It should hit theaters in May. I'm trying to get it at the Palm. Sit back, watch this reel, and you'll see the artistry of Peter Bogdanovich. That last clip is from his new film coming out in May, She's Funny That Way. Ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure to call to the stage a fine actor. He plays Sonny in The Last Picture Show, Timothy Bottoms.
Happy Pie Day. Giuseppe's, this is my lunch. This is for me, Peter. This is for you. What a great honor. Thank you, Wendy, for calling me at the ranch and saying, hey, Tim, could you come down and help celebrate this? I said, absolutely. If it wasn't for you, Peter, I wouldn't have had a career. I was just buying some chicken feed up here, Templeton Hayden Feed, and I said to Tom, I said, hey, Tom, they've asked me, he said, what are you doing, Tim? Are you making any movie? I said, no, I haven't worked in years. I just live on the ranch and taking care of condors and stuff. And I said, hey, have you ever heard of King Vidor? He said, yeah, he had a ranch over here. We used to sell him seed grain. I said, no kidding. Yeah, he was a Paso Robles fella. So I came back and I went online and I kind of looked up who he was, and this is a really fitting award for you, Peter. I mean, I can't think of anyone, that deserves this award, a King Vidor Award, more than Peter Bogdanovich does. In fact, it's kind of funny. I went online and I read something. You might know it. It was a quote online. You two are related to it. Essentially, it said, I wrote it down, but I forgot it. I had to get a clean shirt on to come down here and everything, you know. I was kind of in a rush. Essentially, it was, you know, there's 100 people on a set, and everybody's got their job, but one man makes a decision, the final decision for everything. You know, who's going to be in the shot, what they're going to do. Essentially, he's like a writer or a painter. It comes down to that one man, and in my experience as an actor, which is limited, but you can only trust one person. And that person has to be the director. And I wanted to tell you this for 40 some odd years, Peter, and this is just between you and me, nobody else, okay? Everybody, I trusted you, and I'm thankful that I did, because you gave me a life, and you were very kind to my brother Sammy, and that picture sent me internationally, and I made pictures all over the world. In fact, that conversation was with Alan Pakula, who I got to work with right after I worked with you in Texas. So you sent me to the moon, man. Thank you so much. And so it's my great honor to present Peter Bogdanovich with the 2015 San Luis Obispo International Film Award for Mr. King Vidor. It's in this box. It's really pretty. This is for you, Peter. Please come on up and grab it. Get up there and talk to us.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you kindly. You're very kind. Thank you. I really appreciate that, and I appreciate everything Tim said. And Tim gave me a gift, big gift, a long time ago with that performance, which is beautiful. As you'll see tonight, it's perfect. You don't get that very often. When I was asked if I would accept the King Vidor Award, I was very touched, but also I felt it was, I would want to accept it because I knew King Vidor, and he was an extraordinary person. I didn't know him very well, but I had dinner with him a few times, and we would talk on the phone. And apart from the fact that he made at least two of the greatest films ever made, The Crowd and The Big Parade, I think The Crowd is up there with the top 10, really. It's an amazing film. I wish it was more readily available. But King was quite a complicated guy. He had a lot of masculine qualities and a lot of feminine qualities. He's very intuitive. He had a sort of wisdom about him, a quiet wisdom. He was very humble. He wasn't stuck up in any way. He was kind of modest. I only knew him toward the end of his career. In fact, his career was pretty much over by the time I met him. And I kept saying things like, why am I working and King Vidor isn't? Or Jack Ford or Howard Hawks. These men were giants, and King was one of the great ones. So to accept an award named after him is an honor to me. And I remember King Vidor very well, and I wish you all could have known him. And we almost made a picture together. He wanted to make this movie about a guy named James Murray who was an extra, and because of King, played the lead in The Crowd. And he had a script that he wanted to make called The Extra. And we almost got it made, but I don't want to get into details, but there was a company I had with Coppola and Friedkin, and unfortunately they bowed out, and so the picture didn't get made. And I was very chagrined about that, as was King, but that's the way it goes. Hollywood isn't fun. understatement of the year. Well, I don't know what else to say except thank you again, and I hope you'll go see my new picture, and I hope King won't hate it. Wherever you are, King.
So, Peter, I had all these questions for you, but one stuck out as a result of this San Luis Obispo International Film Festival, and I felt you were the only person on the planet who may be able to answer the question. Last night, Citizen Kane played at Hearst Castle. What would Orson have thought of that? What do you think?
Well, it's a complicated question. I mean, a complicated question because it requires a complicated answer. There's a general misapprehension that Citizen Kane was mainly based on the life of William Randolph Hearst. It wasn't. In fact, the entire plot about the Susan Alexander, who becomes a singer, and he builds her an opera house. That entire thing has nothing to do with Hearst. It all has to do with a guy named McCormick in Chicago, who did, in fact, build the Chicago Opera House for his girlfriend, who was a singer. Not a very good one either. So Hearst, Charles Foster Kane, played by Orson Welles, immortalized by Orson Welles, has certain similarities. The thing about the war in Spain, that was a reference to Hearst. There were a number of references to Hearst, certainly, but he didn't play it like Hearst. And it wasn't meant to be Hearst. Now, there's a story, there's a movie, a terrible TV movie made called RKO something, supposedly about the making of Citizen Kane. And in it was this totally fictional scene in which Orson Welles has dinner with Hearst at the San Simeon and doesn't like him and insults him and they don't get along. This is total bullshit. They never met until the day Citizen Kane opened in San Francisco, and Orson was in an elevator and Hearst entered the elevator. And Orson, who was young and impertinent, said, "I hope you're coming to the screening tonight of Citizen Kane, Mr. Hearst." Hearst said nothing. I'm sure that Charles Foster Kane would come. Nothing. The doors are open, Hearst is leaving. He says, Mr. Hearst, if you're not very careful, I may make a movie about you someday.
You answered the question.
So I don't know how he would feel about the screening room. He'd probably figure it was too small.
Well, in the clips, many directors seem to get a little kickstart from the great Roger Corman. We mentioned these great directors, Orson Welles, John Ford. Roger Corman, maybe not as critically acclaimed as those two directors, but helped you get started, helped Martin Scorsese, Jonathan Demme, Monty Hellman. Can you give us...
Jack Nicholson.
Jack Nicholson. There's a documentary on Roger Corman where Jack Nicholson, I don't think he's acting, he actually sheds a tear.
Oh, I saw that. It was very touching. Roger really gave Jack his start. He starred him in about 3 pictures before anybody had ever heard of him. And they were Westerns. So he had a good instinct as to what Jack would be good at. And Roger is an amazing, one-of-a-kind. He had his own kind of studio, and he gave everybody a chance that if he felt they had any talent at all. And if they didn't, it was okay, he'd move on. He would take you and throw you in the water and say, swim. But I don't know how to swim. Learn. That was my Jerry Lewis impression there. As you get older, you realize Jerry wasn't kidding. Things get rougher when you get older. Aye, it's tough to be old.
Can you give us, I know of one maybe legendary Roger Corman filming where the cinematographer didn't have the right lighting. And so Roger says, bring all your cars around here and turn on your headlights.
I'm sure he did that. Sure he did. We did The Wild Angels was a script that Roger commissioned. A guy named Charlie Griffith wrote it, and Roger called me. I hadn't done a picture yet. I'd directed in the theater and acted in the theater, but I hadn't done a picture yet. I'd been writing for Esquire in Los Angeles. And Roger calls me, he says, would you come to the office and read the script? I think I've got a problem, and I've got 12 pages of notes, and the writer wouldn't even let me finish the first one without arguing with me. So I went over and I read it, and I said, this is a terrible script, Roger. And he says, I know what I'm going to do. I said, well, rewrite it. He said, no, you rewrite it. Me? Yeah, I'll pay you $300 to rewrite it. And no credit. So I said, okay. So I rewrote 85% of the script and helped him cast it. There was a funny bit happened that George Shakiris was supposed to play the lead. And just before about 3 weeks before we were supposed to start shooting, his agent calls him and says, George doesn't want to do the picture. He says the script is immoral. It probably was. I don't remember. But anyway, I think he was taking it a bit far, but it wasn't really immoral. But so Roger says, what are we going to do? I said, I don't know. Well, we've got Peter Fonda playing that other part. Maybe we should move him up to the lead. He said, do you think he could play the lead? I said, I don't know. I've only seen him in Lilith, where he played a kind of prep school, kind of slightly effeminate kid. I don't know if he can play a leader of a motorcycle club. So we had Peter come in. And he came in, and he was wearing a leather jacket and aviator sunglasses, and he sat down. We talked about 45 minutes. In the middle of the whole thing, he took off his glasses, cleaned them, put them back on, and went on talking, so on. Now he leaves the room. We're done. We'll get in touch with you, and so on, whatever. And Roger turns to me, what do you think? I said, well, I think if he keeps his aviator glasses on through the whole picture, we're fine, but don't let him take them off. And he only takes them off once in the picture, and it was a mistake.
Okay, I want to ask you about, there are all great decades of American cinema, but there was something happened in the 70s. An incredible amount of pictures, The Godfather, Chinatown, The Last Picture Show. It was a decade of films that seemed to be a turning point, a maturing of American cinema. And it was also the decade of the birth of the blockbuster, Jaws, Star Wars. An amazing decade. How do you look at it from the outside? Also the fact that you were on the inside making it happen in the 70s. Well,
I'll try to just make this as brief as possible. It's a big subject. But I never thought of the 70s as being a golden age. I thought it was silver at best. But silver isn't bad. Right now, I don't even want to care to say where we are. But there are people who, unfortunately younger people, who haven't seen anything from the golden age, and they say, well, the 70s, that's the great era. Well, you know, it was a good, as I say, it was a silver period. It was a good period. I don't believe that it was more mature or more adult than the golden age of pictures, which I run from about 1912 till about 1962. I go to 62 because that's the year they killed Bugs Bunny. If they stop making Bugs Bunny pictures, it's over. So, am I wrong? Anyway, that golden age, I call it, was extraordinary, as the first of any medium usually is extraordinary. And silent or sound, color, black and white, whatever, that period was extraordinary. There's so many treasures there that you can't exhaust them. They're so good. And in American films, I'm just speaking about American films, not even talk about the rest of the world, which did pretty well too. But when the studio system collapsed in about 1962, 63, and so when it fell apart, you have to understand, studio system meant everybody was under contract. Everybody, the stars, the writers, the directors, the photographers, everybody you need to make a movie, which makes sense. If you're making shoes, you want leather and stuff to make the laces from. You got to have all the things you need to make a shoe. So in the golden age, each studio had everything they needed to make a movie. It makes sense. Now, you make a movie, it's a whole Hazarai. It's like starting all over again. I want to make a movie. Oh, well, who's in it? Oh, I haven't got anybody signed yet. Well, then forget it. Don't even talk to me. That's where we are now.
Did the term demographic...
But the gold, I'm sorry, the Silver Age, we'll call it, the 70s was interesting because it brought forth a bunch of directors who was the next generation. And a lot of them, like Stephen, like Francis, like Marty, they all were influenced by what preceded them. They knew their film history, largely they knew their film history pretty well anyway, and they certainly paid attention to the classics. As it's gotten past the 70s and into the 80s and 90s, that has sort of been lost a bit. And we don't have the same kind of film culture that existed in the 60s and 70s. Because, in my opinion, the 70s began around 1966 and ended around 1976. So it's not quite in sync with the calendar, but I think it's that 10-year period. Then it shifted into, as you say, the blockbuster thing, with every picture had to be a blockbuster. Then the biggest calamity was when Jim Cameron made Titanic, and everybody was saying, oh Christ, he's spending $150 million, he's going to have a complete disaster. Is he out of his goddamn mind? Is he crazy? Then it's a hit, and everybody says, that's the way to do it. Spend $150 million on each picture, and we'll have a hit every time. So that's what they do now.
You know, going off on...
I made the last picture show for $1.3 million. And so today, by inflation, that would be maybe 10 or whatever. That's a low-budget picture. And we made a fortune. I mean, they made a fortune because it didn't cost anything. Now, that makes sense to me. Make a picture for less money and make a fortune. Rather than make a picture for 150, you got to gross 500 million to break even. Makes no sense, I'm telling you.
You know, I forgot to mention and to tell Peter that I saw the last picture show at the Obispo Theater that used to be a block away from here. And it was a theater like this. And it's not here anymore.
Oh, these old palaces are beautiful.
Yes. I'm not sure how much time we have, but I know I have a couple more questions for you. As far as you as a director, John Huston has a quote, something like, half of directing is in the casting. If you get a good cast, the director's job is, you know, not as difficult. There's also a wonderful introduction at the Academy Awards with Walter Matthau and Jack Lemmon, where they talk about there's tall directors, there's short directors, there's ones that know the human condition and nothing about cameras, and vice versa. How do you define directing?
Oh boy, well there are many, many definitions of it, but from my point of view, I think you have to know what the hell the movie is, what you have in mind, have a pretty good idea of how you're going to shoot it. John is absolutely right, cast it brilliantly, with brilliant actors, or with actors who've never acted, just non-professionals, and just get good ones, and show them how to do it. And because I don't mind showing actors how to do something, you know, particularly non-actors who just, and I've used a lot of them. I like doing that. I once asked James Cagney, how many directors he had worked with. He says 82. I said, Jesus, really? Yeah, but I'd only call 5 of them real directors. What's a real director to you, Jimmy? A real director is a guy who, if I don't know what the hell to do, can get up and show me.
And is that your Is that your approach to directing?
Oh yeah, Lubitsch would show everybody how to do the. Sinya Hasso was in one of his pictures. I worked with her when I was 15 or 16 or something, and I said, "You played the French maid in Heaven Can Wait. Did Lubitsch tell you how to play the French maid?" She said, "Yes. He acted it all out for me, and he was very good." Lubitsch, in case those of you might have forgotten, was the most famous and most popular director between 1925 and when he died in about late 40s in the world. Everybody talked about the Lubitsch touch, which was magical. He made great comedies, great romantic comedies. He was a great director, one of my all-time favorites. And he would show everybody how to play the part. He'd act it out for them. So Jack Benny did a picture with him called To Be or Not to Be. And in the 70s sometime I said to Jack, is it true that Lubitsch directed everybody by showing them exactly how to play the scene? He says, yes. I said, well, was he any good? Well, he was a little broad, but you got the idea.
Can we talk about some of your current projects and maybe upcoming projects?
Well, we just finished a new picture called She's Funny That Way. It was originally called Squirrels to the Nuts, but that was considered too difficult for foreign usage, and then other people thought they would think it was a kid's picture. We were going to say this is not a kid's picture, but they didn't think that was valid. So anyway, so it's called She's Funny That Way, which is a title of a song written in the either late 20s or early 30s and recorded very well in the 50s by Frank Sinatra, among other people. Not much to look at, nothing to see, just glad I'm living and lucky to be. I got a woman crazy for me, she's funny that way. That one. We don't use it in the picture. Couldn't afford it. Anyway, that's another story. It was a very difficult picture to make, mainly in post-production for various reasons I can't go into. But the making of the picture, which we knocked off in 29 days in New York, Owen Wilson is a genius. He's a brilliant actor. He's got the old movie star quality. You sort of have a feeling what he's like just from seeing him, and you're probably right. He's also thinks like a writer. He comes up with wonderful lines. He just ad-libs them, and you say that was good. Leave that in, and he's just wonderful to work with. I adore him. We were quite good friends before we made the movie, and now we're just really very close. I love him. Jennifer Aniston, I offered, since she'd played a part with Owen in a picture called Marley and Me, she played his wife, I thought she could play his wife again. So I asked her if she would do it. She read it. She said, I like the script, Peter, but I want to play the therapist. Now, the therapist in the picture is not as big a part as the wife, but it was in the script, and it is the way she plays it. One of the funniest parts in the picture. This is this completely self-absorbed therapist. She's the therapist from hell. And Jennifer playing completely against type, did it very, very well. And then we have a new girl, Imogen Poots, who's about 23, and she plays an escort, and who becomes an actress. She is absolutely one of the most brilliant actresses I've ever worked with. She just can make anything work. And she's English, and she played a Brooklyn girl, and when I told the audience that I had just seen the picture that she was from Brooklyn, so she was from Britain, there was an audible, and nobody could believe it. She's just amazing. Anyway, I'd love you to see it. It's going to be opening in May, I think. So it's a screwball comedy, pretty much. Nobody makes them anymore, so they're afraid that people won't know what it is. I said, just tell them. We had the same problem with What's Up, Doc. Everybody said, "Well, what do we say? What's the ad line?" I said, "A screwball comedy. Remember them?" That's what they did.
It opens in May, by the way.
Yeah.
She's Funny That Way.
And I have another picture that I'm going to make shortly, which has been a project I've been working on for, oh my God, I mean, over 30 years. It's sort of my magnum opus, I guess. It's a wild, crazy sad, funny comedy called Wait for Me. And it's about show business people, again, because, you know, Hemingway said, write about what you know, so I certainly know that aspect of the world. But it's a comedy, fantasy, because there's ghosts in it. There's 6 ghosts in it, but they're all friendly ghosts, I hasten to say. And it's an odd picture because it takes place all over Europe, but it all plays in about 5 days, and it goes from one city to another. There's a lot of action. This director, writer, producer, star, who's the leading character, who's about 60 in the story, has been married 6 times and has 6 daughters. And his last wife was killed in a plane crash 6 years before the movie begins, and he's gone into a downward spiral, and as we meet him for the first time in the movie, he has a basket case, completely fucked up. He can't work in Hollywood, can't work anywhere. Anyway, it's a comedy.
Well, I know we have a movie to watch. Plus, Peter, we have a surprise for you. But in the article in today's Tribune, there were some words that you had mentioned about why film is important. What is the cultural significance? And I think that's one of the most important things we need to keep getting out there, that film history, and you being the film scholar that you are, just a few words on why movies are important.
Well, if I can open this water. Yeah. It's very hard to open now. Well, he did it. I loosened it for you. I tell you quickly. I have a very basic reason why movies are important, which was basically said to me in Jimmy Stewart's living room in 1965 or 66. I was interviewing Jimmy for a piece I did about him for Esquire, a profile I did about him in Esquire. And we were talking about exactly this point. What makes movies so special? Well, what is it about them that's important? And Jimmy said, well, you know, I tell you, I was making a picture in Colorado, and we stopped for lunch, the usual terrible box lunch, and one of the guys that had been watching comes over to me and says, "You, Stewart?" I said, yeah. He said, You said a poem once in a picture. That was good. Oh, thanks, thank you. And that's all he said, and he walked away. And I knew just what he was talking about. It was a scene we'd done 20 years before, and it was just a short thing, couldn't have been more than a minute. And he'd remembered, I said a poem in a bar, and he'd remembered it all those years. And I thought to myself, now that's the wonderful thing about the movies. Because if you're good, and God helps you, and you're lucky enough to have a personality that comes across, and what you're doing is you're giving people little tiny pieces of time that they never forget. I can't emphasize enough how important it is for younger people and all people who care to be cultured in any way to get a good sense of the movies that existed in the Golden Age, because they are a treasure waiting to be found. And too many young people say, I don't like to see black and white. Come on, don't be an idiot. Thank you for this.
It's been a pleasure and an honor to speak with you. We have a little surprise for you. Maybe we should let Peter get off the stage, we do have a little surprise, not only for you. No, no. And then I believe we'll have an intermission in the last picture show.
Oh, Peter. I wish I could be there with you tonight to celebrate you, man. I love you so much. And I love playing with you. We had such good times, no? Just to the rest of the folks out there, I want to let you know you're in the presence of a remarkable filmmaker, a remarkable artist. Just personally, he is, well, I hold him responsible for my whole career. I don't think none of these things that have happened to me, movie-wise, would have happened without Peter. He really gave me my first shot in picture show. And that movie, along with so many of his other movies, really, from my opinion, really just stands alone as a film. There aren't any movies that are like that movie, and it's not like any movie. It just sits there by itself. The Last Picture Show, what a wonderful film. And then, Texasville is an extension of that movie as far as I'm concerned. I love the movie Boyhood, and Texasville was kind of like Boyhood in that we, the same director, same cast, all reassembled to carry on with the lives of these wonderful characters. And I'm hoping that we continue that, Peter, with other of Larry's books, Dwayne's Depressed, and the Rhino Ranch, and all the rest. I love you, man, and I wish I could be there. I celebrate your wonderfulness. Thanks so much, Peter, for all you have given us.